Penn State fans, Bob Flounders here with Max Ralph on a windy, frigid Monday. What else is new? And the last Monday of 2025. Max, here to talk some Penn State news. The Lions are a couple of days removed from a nice showing against Clemson in the Pinstripe Bowl to conclude a 7-6 season that included a 4-game win streak, which was very impressive. I think most fans have to be happy about that, Max. But I don't want to get too far into this podcast without getting to some what sure seems like some breaking news, barring a breakdown, according to numerous reports here at 12:51 on Monday. Max, I believe Penn State is close to landing its defensive coordinator for 2026.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct, Bob. Like you said, many reports, including John Sauber of the Center Daily Times, saying D'Anton Lynn of USC, the defensive coordinator there, is going to be the DC at Penn State, which his name was reported about a week and a half ago as the quote unquote target. But there are obviously some hurdles. Pretty sure he got a nice new deal at USC last offseason when James Franklin and Penn State wanted him, and then ended up with Jim Knowles. And obviously, we know how that went down. But it does sound like Matt Campbell is finally going to be the one who's able to bring D'Anton Lynn back to Penn State, the Letterman who had a nice career in Happy Valley. But Bob, I just my initial reaction, like, this is great for Penn State. He's taken USC is on a higher stage. UCLA, you could call it a stepping stone job, whatever. But he's taken two teams that had just atrocious defenses in the years before he had them and turned them into respectable units. I just had the numbers in front of me. UCLA was 90th in scoring in 2022. He takes over in 23. They jump up to 14th. USC was 121st in 2023. He takes over in 24. They're 56th and 48th in 24 and 25, respectively. Sure, is he going to have a top 10 unit at Penn State? Who knows? But he's taken places that were really bad and were really bad on defense for quite a while and turned them into successful units right away. So I'm really impressed with the hire. I think Penn State had to kind of work to get it done. And here it is. It's a great pickup.
Yep. And then just to reiterate what Max said, it is not, as we talk about this early Monday afternoon on December 29th, it is sure heading in that direction. It is not official. If there's any other news about D'Anton that involves him not becoming Penn State's next defensive coordinator, you can read about it on PennLive, and we'll talk about it on a future podcast. But it sure looks like he is the guy. Max, I would just follow up with saying, when Penn State went out to USC 2 years ago, in a really, really good game, Penn State only had 6 points at halftime. And if it not for a superhuman effort for Tyler Warren, they win that game. They caused some problems for Drew. He had 3 interceptions. One was a Hail Mary again, but he threw a couple of picks. I would argue that D'Anton had USC in a position to win that game, and they couldn't kind of finish it off. But it does speak to what he's able to do in a very short time, taking over a program that just was not very good defensively, whether it was UCLA or USC. And I think even this year, I think he gets the most out of his talent. I think he's very sound. I remember him as a player. The way that he played is you could kind of look at how he coaches. Just a solid player. He was very good at everything. A coach's kid, productive career, played early, was a corner, solid player. Hopefully this bodes well. I hate to say it, Max, but I don't want to say there's nowhere to go but up after what Jim Knowles did in 2025, but there were some issues there for more than half of a season. Then it was discouraging to kind of have Terry Smith have to fix what happened. I think Jim was a little bit slow to react to, hey, we're not playing fast enough. James Franklin kept saying it. And, it really cost them. You think about the UCLA game, even the Northwestern game, the Oregon game, it went into overtime, but Oregon ran the ball when they wanted to. That game probably shouldn't have went into overtime. So it's a long way of saying that I think D'Anton Lynn is a solid, at the very least, a solid hire, and I think his track record indicates he knows what he's doing.
Absolutely, and you're right. I mean, Penn State went out and spent over $3 million to bring Jim Knowles to Happy Valley, and it ended up like that. It's not a good situation.
No.
I do think like there's part of it where, as
Yeah.
we've heard from a lot of guys, players were not totally bought into this, kind of reading their own press clippings, right? Like believing the hype. And that's the thing. When you're running a complex scheme like
Yeah.
Jim Knowles was, maybe you don't work hard enough to pick it up, et cetera, et cetera. But there's absolutely no reason that any defense should allow 130 rushing yards to do two different quarterbacks in one season. Like it wasn't good. Jim Knowles was certainly partially to blame.
Yep.
And Dan Lynn comes in and has just done really good work. I think it's a great pickup. And, I keep saying this qualifier whenever we talk about Matt Campbell, whenever we talk about coaching staff, whenever we talk about transfer portal, whatever it may be. Penn State's schedule is really, really manageable next year. This is a guy who has turned units around like that. I'm just like, keep that in mind. Like if he's able to get the most out of a unit that he doesn't have a background with, that's great news, because that is almost exactly what went wrong with Jim Knowles. Everybody says it takes 3 years to learn his system. Dan Lynn comes in at both of his places and he makes an impact right away. I think the long term is important too, because you're hoping this is a hire that is for more than just 1 year, especially when he's a letterman and you make a pretty big pursuit to go get him. But still, like, hey, I like, this is impressive. This is good news for 2026 and beyond.
Yeah, Max, I agree. Penn State fans, thanks for listening and watching to the Blue White Breakdown all year. We're going to have a bunch of them. Well, I don't know how the rest of this holiday is going to play out, but when we get into 2026, we're going to continue on with the Blue White Breakdown. We'll have a bunch of them. Max, I have a perfect, not a perfect segue. Nothing's perfect, but we're talking about what D'Anton Lynn can do, but he's going to need Penn State's replacing some very, very good players, obviously on both sides of the ball, but they're gonna need some reinforcements, and with the transfer portal opening right around the corner on January 2nd, I think it's a good point, a jump off point to kind of talk about maybe some of the key questions and storylines facing Penn State. And when you look at Penn State's defense in 2026, they lose some good players. They hopefully can retain some good veteran players, but also they have to keep their most talented young defensive players as well. Because if you don't have the athletes, your schemes really aren't going to matter. And Penn State traditionally has had the athletes, but this is a pretty big transfer portal for Penn State when you consider what happened with the recruiting class and how Matt Campbell and his staff kind of had to catch up with James Franklin getting dismissed in the middle of October. So very, very curious to see how the transfer portal plays out, especially now if we're talking about the DC on the defensive side.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you mentioned the big questions facing Penn State. I put out a story with my thoughts on that. I made 5 of them, and it wasn't number 1, it was number 2, but who was going to be the defensive coordinator was on that list. That's figured out now. I will say one question that does kind of beg itself following that is what happens with Anthony Poindexter, but that may be a conversation for another day. Questions: who's the quarterback? That has everything to do with the transfer portal, because Rocco Becht is out there, but once again, Ethan Grunkemeyer really shined in the Pinstripe Bowl and in difficult conditions too. I mean, it was frozen footballs. How many drops? There had to be 15 drops in that game across both sides. And he's had another 2-minute drill where it's just like he's got the poise. He's made a few accurate throws, really nice, like career high passing yards. He just keeps getting better. And is Matt Campbell, is he bought in? But again, you can do worse than a 9,000-yard passing quarterback who knows your system. Like there are 2 great options. And the third is the portal if something happens. But I don't really see, if you're Matt Campbell, why you would go away from those 2 options that you have in front of you. And that is the number 1 question, because the quarterback is the football team. I mean, call it what you want, but that's how it goes. I mean, Matt Campbell and whoever his quarterback is will be attached at the hip for next season and whatever happens after. That's how it goes in this sport. Also, transfer portal. How many Iowa State guys is he bringing with him? There are, I think the number is 39 as of this morning. Iowa State players who have entered the portal. Is he bringing all of them? Like, is this just going to be Iowa State 2.0 at Penn State next year? Are they going to be able to go out and snag a big fish somewhere? I mean, there are going to be big names entering the portal. Like, I'm not connecting these two in any ways. Don't take me the wrong way, but I saw Cam Coleman from Auburn just entered this morning. Very talented wide receiver. Like, there are going to be big fish out there. Is it really just Iowa State 2.0, or is Penn State serious about all that money that they throw in there? And are they going to attract those guys? The portal is so interesting this year, and it's going to be huge for Penn State.
Yeah, Max, let's hope it's not Iowa State 2.0. He's got to have to be selective in who he brings from his former program. I think Matt and his staff know exactly who they want from the former team. And I would just say this. I don't see a world in which, I mean, it's not going to be, I don't think it's going to be Grunk and this guy. I think both players have showed that they obviously Rocco has showed that he's a starting quarterback and he knows the system. So it's kind of unfortunate, but both guys want to play. Ethan made it clear after the game, no decision's been made and his agents are involved. And he has, I don't think, this is what I would say. I don't think Penn State could go wrong with either option. I'd be stunned if it's both. It's going to have to be one or the other because the other one's going to get a good deal. And then the question becomes, they don't really have, I mean, do they have, you know, I know they brought in the Falzone kid, but do they have another quarterback on the roster they can develop? And if anything happens to the starter, can they put him in the game next year and win some games? It was a revelation, I thought, Max, watching Ethan's growth. Really, I have to say I am pleasantly surprised by how this turned out for him. Because if you consider some of the teams he played against, I don't know many quarterbacks that were veterans could have done any better than Ethan. It was a phenomenal job. He's certainly shown, and Terry Smith has said, you know, he is a quarterback that you can win with. And I think Terry Smith carries a lot of weight now. I'm sorry. When he makes statements like that, you better pay attention. And if Penn State isn't paying attention, another school's going to pay attention. I know Kurt Cignetti was raving about this kid, Brunkmeyer, after he almost beat Indiana at Beaver Stadium. But just watching how this plays out, I just don't know if there's a world in which they can both stay, even if Rocco's only going to be here for 1 year, because Ethan's going to be in his third year in 2026, and he has earned the right to compete for the starting job at a big-time school.
Yeah, a lot of points I want to follow up on there, Bob, but I'm in agreement on everything. Like, I'm a little stunned. Like, I was always a believer in Ethan Grunkemeyer. I talked to his coach in high school. I talked to him when he was signing in high school. Like, I thought that the profile was there, but to come into this situation and do it is just really impressive. And I think part of it too, Bob, is like one of the greatest traits in a quarterback is the poise and the ability to handle pressure and not just pressure in the pocket, which he's done a pretty good job of too, but all the noise of like you're on a 6-game losing streak and you're going on the road at Iowa and Ohio State, and he got better from it. Like he learned from it. And I don't want to disparage Drew Aller in any way, but if you compare these two situations, like you saw marked improvement from Ethan Grunkemeyer along the way. Drew Aller got better as a quarterback throughout his career, but I'm not sure we ever saw the leaps and bounds that it seemed like Ethan Grunkemeyer made. And all the while, you can see like the wheels turning in his head. Like he was handling it so well. So I'm not like surprised in the sense that I thought he was going to be a good quarterback, but just as quickly as it happened is so impressive. And I'm with you. I think Terry Smith has a lot of say in what goes on. I think Matt Campbell would be stupid not to listen to Terry Smith about this team, because Terry Smith took a bottom feeder and made him win 4 in a row in impressive fashion. And maybe it is Grunk. It ain't going to be both, because you're absolutely right. Both guys can start somewhere. And in this era of the transfer portal, where it's so easy to go somewhere else, there's just no reason for both to sit on one team. So I'm with you there. To your point about what would be behind Rocco Becht if that was the path, I mean, who knows? Like the transfer portal can be crazy. Penn State
Mm-hmm.
could be expecting a kid to commit next week, and he actually
Right.
ends up going elsewhere for a better offer. Keep
Mm-hmm.
all of that in mind. But there is a
Mm-hmm.
4-star quarterback who is a freshman behind Beck this year that is entering the portal as well, Alex Mansky, top 25 quarterback in his class. Look, that could be a name that you watch and you say, look, we already had him in our system. This is a guy in Iowa State and Matt Campbell, very good at evaluating talent and developing it. That's a guy they believe in. You can make an argument that it makes a lot of sense to have the stopgap of Beck for next year, which when you call it a stopgap, it's not really that. Like, he's good. And then have this kid be able to take over in 27. I almost said 26, but we're already there. So there are a lot of options. That's an intriguing one. Names to keep an eye on. But Bob, I'm with you. Ethan Grunkemeyer, very impressive, and I don't believe both guys will be at Penn State next year.
It's the reality of college football. I mean, if you're not required to stay if you want it. You know, it's a year-to-year thing, and the coaches that can adjust the quickest are the coaches that are going to be the most successful. It's why Curt Cignetti, you know, as we talk about it, is, I think, at the very top of his profession. His ability to develop and also anticipate and plan, you know, in the short term, but also for the long term. You know, and he's got the financial commitment for some people at Indiana, so that's key. But he is to me, no one is doing it better than him, and that's kind of what. I don't know that James was ever going to kind of master that because of his beliefs and his development beliefs at Penn State. We'll see how Matt. I'm really excited to see what Matt is going to do. But I wanted to just a couple of storylines I wanted to ask you about that I wrote about. There's so many of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't. When you look at this roster, and we're going to talk, you know, pre-transfer portal, just as it sits at 1:07 p.m. with the players that have announced they're going to go into the transfer portal, or the veterans that have announced they're going to opt out to get ready for the draft. Some very, very, very big shoes to fill. Max, when you just look at the roster right now, pre-transfer portal, what are a couple of positions I don't want to say that you're concerned about, but you're very curious about in terms of, hey, they really, really, really need to have a good offseason with development and the transfer portal. These are some positions. The personnel losses are so significant that regardless of the schedule, they're priorities to get better at these positions.
Yeah, so I'll give you 3 of them because, I mean, you could almost go to every position because of the amount of seniors that are leaving, a couple of guys in the portal. But number one, first and foremost, in my opinion, is defensive line, because that group underperformed this year. Even with stars like Zane Durant, Denai Dennis Sutton there, who had very good moments at the end of the season. Clearly were not who we thought they were going to be early on, but had nice moments at the end.
Yep.
Big props to Denai for playing in that bowl game. That was impressive. Much respect to him. Those guys are gone, and there's not necessarily a whole lot of depth behind them. Chaz Coleman's in the portal already. I really like Yvonne Kamaju. I think he's a good player. I think Xavier Gilliam's a good player. But there's just not a lot of depth. You know, is Max Granville going to be healthy? Is he even going to be at Penn State next year?
Very interesting name. Very interesting name, I think, in 2026.
I think that's a name a lot of us forgot about because we thought he was going to be like number 2, number 3 edge rusher this year and got hurt early in the offseason. That's a name, like, if you can keep him around, that could be huge. But there's just not a lot of depth there. The other one, and this one is just, it's funny how even through a staff change, we continue to talk about this position group. But wide receiver, I mean, 3 of the top 4 guys were seniors. They are gone. And they underperformed, but even like when Grunk took over, the passing offense started to look pretty legit, especially Devontae Ross and Trevor Pena. Noah Pauley, I think, is a fantastic wide receivers coach. I'm very curious to see what he can do, but that group is going to look completely different. Is a Kobe Howard going to stick around? Who knows? But behind those top 4, there really wasn't a lot of talent that we're aware of, at least. I mean, who knows what's going on behind the scenes that, maybe somebody's not getting playing time that could have played, but we didn't see it on the field. And there's at most one guy coming back in that room that has any level of experience or production, and that's Kobe Howard, and that's probably up in the air. And then the third one, I'm going to go linebacker because Tony Rojas and Amari Campbell both have eligibility. And if you can get those 2 guys back, I don't really care what the rest of the unit looks like.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have a top 5 defense in the Big Ten because those two guys are that good. That's a bold statement, I know, but they are that good. And if you compare them together, it's going to be huge. Who knows? Because there's obviously we saw the leaked audio and Pat Kraft made a comment to Tony Rojas, like, I know Miami's not that nice, like who knows how this thing's going to go, but those two are, in my opinion, among the biggest priorities. I know who you're thinking of, Bob. You're a big Darius Dixon fan. I am too. Got to keep him around, but those two linebackers.
They don't keep Darius Dixon. I mean, it's like they made. I feel like they went out and they made Terry Smith an offer he couldn't refuse.
Mm-hmm.
Not only because of what he was doing in the moment, but also his strength as a recruiter and as a position coach on the defensive side. The guy clearly showed. But I think they need to make Darius an offer he cannot refuse. He talked afterward about how much he's a Terry Smith guy, and he gave every indication that I don't think a first year player is going to blow smoke. I think he would very much like to be back at Penn State. The problem is, I think there's a lot of programs that would very much like to have Darius Dixon. That guy is a dude. I mean, I'm telling you, Max, they list him at like 6 foot 190. He is bigger than that. He is a big guy, and he can handle himself. Of all the players that are on this roster that are young, he has to be the guy because he's that good. There's a lot of other guys that are in the conversation, but man, what he did in the second half of the season, phenomenal. I don't ever recall seeing a corner with his ability, his instincts, his intelligence play that well that young at Penn State. And that goes back a long ways. But Max, what I wanted to talk to you about was 2 other positions. And I know you were a Darius Dixon guy as well. But for me, not to be Captain Obvious, but there's some uncertainty at running back, right? There just is. And the other position for me that I'm more than a little bit curious about is offensive tackle. I do know, as we talk about this, Penn State can really help themselves if they can bring one of the most promising veteran tackles in the Big Ten back for another year. But he could do a number of things, and I'm sure a lot of schools would love to have Anthony Donko if he wanted to. He's big enough that he could actually even think about maybe he'll be a 4th-year player in 2026. It wouldn't stun me if he even was listening to maybe thinking about coming out. But he's a special player. I'm just worried about offensive tackle. The other starter. Also, you need a swing tackle. There's some promising young players at that position, but they're losing. When you lose Shelton and you lose Rucci, you really shouldn't lose Donko if you can. And the other thing is, I just don't know. I really don't know what I think, how to really read what I saw from Quentin Martin in that bowl game. He looked fantastic. He did. He looked like a Penn State running back. I mean, there was probably a lot of reasons why I didn't get a carry in the regular season, and 2 of them were Nick Singleton and Katron Allen. But he just hit the ground running, Max. Like from his first or second carry when he went for 20 yards, it was pretty clear they started the wrong running back in the game, and they made the adjustment quickly. Unlike Franklin, who probably would have been 50-50, they fed Martin the ball, and he got better with every carry. He's a big kid. He gets downhill, but in the Big Ten, again with an offensive line that's still kind of it's going to be remade a little bit. I just don't know what to think about the Penn State running back room when you think about who finished the season on the roster.
You made a point at the end there that I think is one of the most interesting things. I'm curious to see how it plays out with Matt Campbell and his staff, because James Franklin stuck to his guys. Like the NIL hierarchy that we know was a thing. He wasn't breaking it. In my head, I'm thinking, I mean, we saw it with the wide receivers. We saw it with running backs, defensive, like whatever. We know that there was a playing time order, and James Franklin was not really breaking from it. Terry Smith changed that immediately. He did. Katron Allen, Quentin Martin in the bowl game, whatever. Those things existed. I'm thinking about some of those guys who are down the roster now after we see a Kobe Howard, a Quentin Martin, a Darius Dixon break out in these years. Who is down the list that we haven't seen that can play? Yeah. And like for another position group that you just mentioned, offensive tackle, like What about Javen Williams? Like
Yeah.
a guy who was so
Yeah.
highly regarded coming out of high school, needed some time to work on his pass pro because they ran the wing T in high school, but
Yeah.
like that's a guy who has talent. Like you can't tell me he doesn't have talent. Like
Right.
that's just one name that comes to mind. If Penn State and Matt Campbell can keep some of those guys around, like what's on this roster that we're not really aware of? Because Quentin Martin certainly was one of them. That's a guy who was unbelievable in high school, like really good. The tape absolutely jumped out from Bell Vernon, played both sides of the ball. You
Yeah.
thought maybe he was going to be a wide receiver at Penn State. Like people have said he could play anywhere just because he's that good of an athlete. Finally got the chance to show it. Really impressed by just like the one cut ability of him in that bowl game. Like when he saw a lane, he'd hit it hard, but he was also versatile enough to be able to make the cutbacks. Talented running back. I genuinely think there are a lot of scholarship running backs in that room are pretty good. Tyke Hayes didn't get a huge workload, but
Right.
I think he made a few nice plays. The one pass pro people were talking about was
he did have a nice pick.
good.
He did.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like I think there's some talent in that room, and that's why I'm not super worried about it, because I think if you can keep any of those guys, it's pretty solid. And there are also a few solid running backs in the portal from Iowa State that could come over. I think that position will probably work itself out. O-line is certainly one, Bob, to keep an eye on because, like you said, we don't know a whole lot about him. I mean, like a Malachi Goodman is down the list, who was a 5-star prospect this year. Can they keep him around? How good is he? Just a lot of questions, and we're going to keep talking about him. But I'm glad you made the point about Quentin Martin not playing, and that's a different situation because Nick Singleton and Katron Allen were so good. No one's questioning why Quentin Martin didn't really play a whole lot, but it made me think, like, what else is out there that we're not aware of?
Yeah, Max, and I do think you talked about linebacker, and you talked about, if a healthy Rojas and Campbell are there, I think they learned a lesson. I think they were a couple linebackers short, and I think that is still a position, even if they could keep if they can keep Tony and they can keep Campbell and Alex Tash is healthy and good to go. I think they feel pretty good about the top of the depth chart. LeVar Arrington II, that is a fascinating player, but his journey is just getting started. You think about a kid like Anthony Specca at the start of the year when we thought he would be maybe a top 4, top 5 linebacker, but that really didn't pan out. I think if you're Matt Campbell and Penn State is giving you a healthy budget for NIL, I think the lesson you can learn from what went wrong in 2025 is don't get caught short on depth at a position, because I feel like they did get caught short at linebacker, and they got caught when Rojas went down. Amari Campbell played every snap, and they really didn't have anyone else they could turn to in the first half of the season. So wherever they are, if you're Matt and his staff, I think it's better to have it one or two more than one or two less, because the expectation is, even though you're starting your regime, that you just don't ever want to you don't ever want to be involved in a 3-6 start at Penn State ever again. It's a different set of circumstances, but you think about the quarterback room, you think about the linebacker room, you think about defensive end, the key positions, even corner and safety. Max, now that Zakee Wheatley is moving on, that's a position to me that I'm a little bit curious about. King Mack is not shy about going into the transfer portal. We have learned that. So I just think this is going to be fascinating to watch, because James really wasn't a believer in the transfer portal. He looked at it as like a finishing touch, whereas I think you have to really commit to, hefty roster building in the transfer portal on the fly, and I want to see how Matt and his staff do.
Yeah, I mean, every single position on Penn State's 2025 roster had a senior who is no longer with the team.
Yeah.
I mean, regardless of how many guys that contributed to this season enter the portal, you are losing players in bunches. Like this year, Matt Campbell really has his work cut out for him. I think they did a really nice job in the portal at Iowa State with fewer resources. They have I have every reason to believe that they can be successful here. But you got to go out and do it. And how about year one having to bring in probably like 50 players? It's going to be it's hard work, but they're going to have to do it. And it's going to be a lot of fun and really fascinating to see how they go about it.
Yeah. So, and it's really underway now, but technically it starts January 2nd. But that's just kind of a number. That's just a
Right.
date that's out there. I mean, the good players are already barking about going into the transfer portal. So I just think, Max, we've talked on this podcast about Darius. I think Jameer Joseph is another guy
Hmm.
that they really I really think he was pretty good in that bowl game, and every time he
Yeah.
played, he was pretty good. You look at the corner room, you look at the safety. We talked about Kobe Howard, Darius Dixon. I think it's definitely fair to. I mean, they better be right. They better be right about the quarterback. You know what I mean? If Brunkmeyer walks and Rocco Becht, is the guy, I hope they made the right decision. Matt Campbell talked about it shortly after signing day. Is like the quarterback. You have to be right about the quarterback. The quarterback runs the locker room. He's going to lead your team, and the whole team knows who the quarterback on the roster really should be. But when you say that, you know, you look at what Ethan Grunkmeyer did in some pretty big games. He looked like a number one quarterback. So I think this is going to be really fun to watch. The last couple of years, I just didn't get the sense that Penn State was serious about the transfer portal, but not in the way that maybe they needed to be because of the way that James, he kept stressing developmental program, and that is true. But I think the ratio was a little bit off, and I think James was going to stick to his guns. I think the ratio of transfer portal to the guys on your staff, the guys on your team, and developing them. I think it's got to be much closer to probably, I don't know, I'm going to say 50-50, maybe even more depending on who you lose. But it felt like it was 90-10 or 85-15, and I don't know that you can survive. James talked about if you live in the transfer portal, you could die in the transfer portal. Well, I mean, you can also die. You can also die on the development hill as well.
Penn State did die on the development hill this
Yeah,
season. So,
yeah,
like, it's just the way the game and the NCAA has evolved. You have to buy into the transfer portal. It's like in basketball. People say you live and die by the three. Yeah, because three is worth more than two.
yeah,
If there are any
yeah,
if there are any avid Penn State basketball fans listening, they'll probably remember Micah Shrewsbury saying that a whole lot. And
yeah.
it's just like it's the analytics of the game. It's the way it's changed. You got to go get experience and talent in the portal. You can absolutely get guys out of high school who are talented and will stay in your program for 4 years. That's still a thing. It's out there, but it's not the end all be all anymore. And
Mm-hmm.
James Franklin really he did not do a good enough job of that at Penn State. I anticipate Matt Campbell will be more focused on that because I don't think Pat Kraft would have hired him if he wasn't.
Yeah. I'm kind of curious. Honestly, I'm kind of curious to see what James does in the transfer portal at Virginia Tech, and if he talks differently about the transfer portal as he gets going at Virginia Tech. But Max, before we get out of here on this blue white breakdown, I wanted to ask you: were there any more of you have a story up on PennLive about 5 pressing questions, I believe, for Matt Campbell. Kind of moving forward early in this offseason. Was there any other question you wanted to address that you addressed in your story?
We pretty much hit on all of them. It was who's the quarterback, who's the defensive coordinator, a transfer portal, and also high school recruiting
Okay.
because there's still some time. I mean, the next signing date is in February. They've got time to get some guys. Currently, it's mostly a group of former Iowa State signees who have come over, but I think there's some talent there. I think there's still some good talent that's uncommitted or unsigned at the very least. I'm just curious who they could go out and get. I know
Yeah.
there's a Samson Gash out there that has been a hot name. I'm not sure where things stand with that, but that's a 4-star wide receiver that Penn State could certainly have some interest in. And I'm just curious how many more they add there because that's a piece of this roster construction. If we think they're going to lose 50 guys via graduation or portal, are you going to bring in 50 portal guys? Are you going to bring in 25 high school and 25 portal? Like that's all part of this. How does that math work out? There is a lot to be done, and yeah, we're going to see how it goes.
All right, Penn State fans, we're roughly, I don't know, 48 hours away from 2026. It's December 29th.
Yeah,
It's freezing outside like it's been for the last 75 straight weeks. It feels like Max, I complained about the brutal heat in July, and here I am ranting about now it's too cold. Hey, Bob, you can't have it both ways. I think I'd rather be in July and just sweating than just being in this perpetual winter vortex that looks like there's no end in sight. But that's my problem. Max, it was good chatting with you. I know we're going to have some more stories. I also know I think you have some downtime still this week. But before you know it, it's 2026, Penn State fans. And after what happened with Penn State this year, you could look at it as a half glass full or a half glass empty as they finish the season. I think there are still some things that they should be really proud about, this Penn State program, the way that they finished up. You mentioned D'Anton Dennis Sutton. I totally agree with you. I think he had it right. And that's just kind of the guy that he is. But Max, we got more to get to here with Penn State football coverage. Check out some of our stories this week. And Max, I know at some point you and Johnny McGonigal will be heard from on a podcast, and I hope it will be sooner rather than later.
I will. We'll keep everybody posted. That's for sure.